The crushing darkness of the deep ocean becomes a part of you after enough time spent beneath the waves. After 15 years as a recovery specialist, I thought I'd grown accustomed to that darkness, to the pressure that wants to collapse your lungs and squeeze your skull until your eyeballs pop. I was wrong. Nothing could have prepared me for what we discovered in the lightless void of the Mariana Trench. Some people are drawn to mountains, others to deserts or forests. Me, I've always been called by the deep. There's something about descending into a world where humans don't belong that satisfies some primal need in my soul. The silence, the absolute separation from the chaos of surface life, the knowledge that I'm seeing things few human eyes have ever witnessed. It becomes addictive. My father was a Navy diver before me. He used to come home with stories that made my mother turn pale. Tales of the bends claiming friends, of equipment failures in crushing depths, of recovery operations that brought up bloated corpses instead of salvage. He'd tell these stories with a faraway look, hands trembling slightly around his whiskey glass. I should have recognized the warning for what it was. Instead, I saw only adventure. My name is Jackson Mercer. Before this expedition, I'd built a reputation as the guy you called when something valuable ended up where humans were not meant to go. Crash planes and mountain lakes, sunken cargo ships, prototype technologies lost to the sea, I'd recovered them all. The pay was exceptional, the dangers considerable, but the real reward was the silence down there, the perfect isolation. Until the isolation wasn't so perfect anymore. My specialty became deep water recoveries, the kind most divers won't touch. I developed techniques for operating at depths that made safety consultants nervous. Custom mixed gases, experimental decompression protocols, modified equipment pushed beyond manufacturers' specifications. I started breaking records almost by accident, just doing what was necessary to get the job done. National Geographic did a profile on me after I recovered a billionaire's yacht from 600 feet down. The man who talks to the abyss, they called me. If they only knew how the abyss would eventually talk back. The Komarov incident was what really put me on the map. A Russian oligarch's submarine had gone down in the Philippine Sea with his entire family aboard. The vessel had imploded at depth, but there was a titanium safe containing family heirlooms, diamonds mostly, that had survived. 3 recovery teams had already failed when they called me. 4 weeks later, I handed over a waterproof case containing $30 million in diamonds. The Russians paid triple my usual fee and offered me a permanent position, which I declined. I prefer to work freelance. No attachments, no commitments, just me and the deep. Between jobs, I kept an apartment in Seattle, but rarely spent time there. Home became hotel rooms in coastal cities, research vessels, the occasional decompression chamber. I had few friends and fewer relationships. The only constant companion was the sea itself, vast and unknowable and patient. I respected its power while most of my colleagues feared it. Maybe that's why I survived when others didn't. Looking back, I can see the pattern now. Each recovery taking me deeper, each success making me more reckless, more willing to push boundaries. Pride comes before the fall, as they say, and there is no greater fall than into the darkest trenches of the ocean floor. It began with a call from Dr. Eleanor Frost, oceanographer and deep-sea explorer. We'd worked together on 3 previous recovery operations, all successful, all pushing the boundaries of depth and human endurance. But her voice carried something new this time. Excitement, yes, but also unease. "Jack, we've detected something unusual at the bottom of the Challenger Deep," she said, the static on the satellite phone barely masking the tremor in her voice. "The readings suggest a metallic structure of considerable size. Initial sonar mapping indicates it's not a natural formation." "Shipwreck?" I asked, already calculating the logistics of such a deep recovery. The Challenger Deep is the deepest known point in the Earth's oceans, nearly 7 miles down. "That's just it. It can't be. The pressure would have crushed any conventional vessel centuries ago. Yet our readings show structural integrity. This isn't ancient, Jack. Whatever it is, it's maintaining its form." I remember standing at my kitchen window, phone pressed to my ear, watching rain patter against the glass as Eleanor detailed their findings. The Pacific Marine Research Institute had been conducting a routine mapping expedition of the Mariana Trench when their advanced sonar array picked up the anomaly. Initial scans suggested a metallic composition, but with unusual properties that defied analysis. The object was approximately 60 meters in length, partially embedded in the sediment of the ocean floor, and emitting trace amounts of radiation. "We've kept this quiet," Eleanor continued. "Only the Institute director and the core research team know. We've secured private funding for a recovery operation." Recovery? At that depth? Eleanor, you're talking about pressure exceeding 8 tons per square inch. No human has ever gone that deep. That's why we need you. We're building something, Jack. Something revolutionary. A deep submergence vehicle unlike anything ever constructed. Theoretical maximum depth of 12,000 meters. I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. That's science fiction. The hull materials don't exist. They do now. Experimental metallic glass combined with a carbon nanotube lattice. The viewports are lab-grown sapphire crystals 3 times thicker than anything previously manufactured. We've been developing this for years, waiting for the right mission. I should have declined. Should have recognized the reckless ambition in her voice, the dangerous blend of scientific curiosity and competitive drive that pushes explorers beyond safe limits. But the challenge called to me, the ultimate depth, the ultimate recovery. "The money's good, Jack," she added, though we both knew that wasn't my primary motivation. $5 million for 3 weeks of your time, plus a percentage of any technological applications developed from what we recover. "What exactly do you think is down there?" I asked, the question that should have been first suddenly becoming urgent. The pause before her answer lasted just a beat too long. "We don't know. That's the point of the expedition." I've replayed that conversation countless times since, trying to detect the hesitation, the careful omission that might have warned me, but at the time, all I heard was the siren call of the deep, beckoning me toward the greatest challenge of my career. "When do we start?" I asked. "The Abyssal Pioneer sails from Guam in 1 week. I'll email you the details." As I packed for the journey, a package arrived from Eleanor. Inside was a thumb drive containing detailed technical specifications for the Nautilus submersible, along with preliminary sonar imaging of the target. The images were grainy and indistinct, but even then, something about the smooth, curved shape struck me as odd. Not manufactured exactly, but too regular to be natural. The drive also contained personnel files on the expedition team. I studied them carefully, evaluating the people who would hold my life in their hands at the bottom of the world. 3 days later, I found myself on a flight to Guam, where the research vessel, Abyssal Pioneer, awaited. The ship was impressive, a converted oil platform research vessel with state-of-the-art laboratories, and the most advanced deep-sea submersible ever constructed, the Nautilus. The crew was small but elite. Besides Dr. Frost, there was Dmitry Volkov, our Russian pilot and mechanical engineer whose hands could fix anything with moving parts, Amara Okafor, the brilliant marine biologist with specialization in abyssal ecosystems, and Vincent Torres, our taciturn sonar technician. Rounding out the team was Dr. Marcus Reed, geologist and deep-sea pressure expert, who spoke of the ocean depths with reverent fear. Captain Reginald Foster, a weathered man with 40 years at sea, greeted me with a firm handshake and knowing eyes. "Whatever you find down there," he said, "remember that some things are hidden for a reason." I laughed it off then. I'm not laughing anymore. My first sight of the Abyssal Pioneer was breathtaking. A 300-foot research vessel retrofitted with cutting-edge oceanographic equipment. Its white hull gleamed in the tropical sun, bristling with sensor arrays, communications equipment, and custom-designed cranes for deploying deep-sea gear. The rear deck housed a pressurized hangar where the Nautilus submersible waited, shrouded under protective tarps like some technological deity, receiving devotion from the white-coated technicians surrounding it. Eleanor met me at the gangway, looking both exhausted and exhilarated. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her handshake was firm. "We've been working around the clock. The target has been active." "Active? What does that mean?" moving slightly, adjusting its position in the sediment, and the radiation signature has been fluctuating on a regular cycle. I felt the first genuine flicker of unease. That's not possible. 17 days ago, I would have agreed with you. She led me through the ship's interior, a maze of narrow corridors, laboratory spaces, and control rooms humming with activity. In the main research lab, holographic displays showed rotating 3D models of the target, now much clearer than the images I'd seen earlier. The object's surface appeared to be covered in interlocking plates or scales, arranged in patterns reminiscent of circuit boards. Initial theories, I asked, studying the displays. Split between terrestrial and non-terrestrial origin. Eleanor replied carefully. You're saying it might be alien. She shrugged. I'm saying we don't know what it is, which is why we're all here. I met the rest of the team over dinner that night. Dmitry Volkov proved to be a study in contradictions. A burly man with delicate movements, a thick Russian accent that somehow never impeded clear communication, and eyes that missed nothing. He'd designed half the Nautilus's systems himself and spoke of the submersible with paternal pride. She is beautiful, no, like ballerina, but made of titanium and sapphire. Amara Okafor was younger than I expected. Barely 30, but with a publication record that put senior researchers to shame. Her specialization was in extremophile organisms, life forms that thrive in conditions that would kill most species. Her theories about potential life in the deepest ocean trenches had been controversial but were gaining acceptance. The Mariana Trench isn't just a hole in the ocean floor, she explained over bowls of seafood stew. It's an ecosystem unlike any other on Earth. The pressure creates conditions more alien than Mars. Vincent Torres said little during dinner, focusing on his food with methodical precision. His reputation as a sonar savant was well earned. He could distinguish subtle acoustic signatures that automated systems missed entirely. He'd been the first to detect the anomalous readings from the target. It doesn't sound right, he said when pressed, his first contribution to the conversation. Not like metal, not like rock. It absorbs and reflects sound in patterns I've never encountered. Dr. Marcus Reed was the oldest member of the scientific team, a geologist who'd specialized in high-pressure mineralogy. His silver hair and patrician bearing gave him an air of authority, but I noticed his hands trembled slightly when discussing the target. The sediment surrounding the object shows signs of disturbance, he noted. Recent disturbance, as if something had been digging. Captain Foster joined us for coffee, bringing with him the pragmatic perspective of someone responsible for vessel and crew safety. He'd commanded everything from container ships to military vessels before joining the Institute, and his assessment of our mission was blunt. We're pushing well beyond established safety protocols. If anything goes wrong at that depth, there's no rescue scenario. You understand that, Mercer? I nodded. It wasn't news to me or anyone at the table. My responsibility is to this ship and everyone aboard, he continued. If I determine at any point that the mission represents an unacceptable risk, I will abort. No discussion. As we dispersed for the night, Eleanor pulled me aside. There's something else you should know, she said, voice low. We're not the first to detect this object. My pulse quickened. Who else? 2 years ago, a Chinese deep-sea research mission recorded similar readings but lost their remote submersible while investigating. They classified all their findings afterward. Then 8 months ago, a joint Franco-Japanese expedition experienced catastrophic equipment failures in the same region. 3 crew members committed suicide in the following weeks. Jesus, Eleanor, you didn't think this was relevant information. I'm telling you now, the others don't know. I didn't want to prejudice the mission before we'd even begun. Or you were afraid they'd back out, I countered. Her silence was confirmation enough. Back in my cabin, I reviewed the technical specifications for the Nautilus again. The submersible was a marvel of engineering, a pressure sphere of unprecedented strength surrounded by an exoskeleton of composite materials. Its life support systems were triply redundant, its power supplied by next-generation fuel cells. But for all its technological brilliance, it was still a fragile bubble of air in an environment utterly hostile to human life. Sleep came fitfully that night, punctuated by dreams of crushing darkness and something vast moving through it. When I woke at dawn, the ship was already underway, steam rising from the sea around us as we sliced through water the color of polished hematite. The first week was preparation. The Nautilus was unlike any submersible I'd worked with before, a titanium sphere surrounded by an elaborate exoskeleton of carbon fiber and experimental alloys. Its viewports were made of artificially grown sapphire crystal, designed to withstand pressures that would reduce a human skull to paste in microseconds. "We've never sent humans this deep before," Dr. Frost explained during our briefing. "The Nautilus is our first genuine attempt. Previous expeditions used remote vehicles or limited duration diving bells. You'll be down there for 12 hours. If something goes wrong..." She didn't need to finish. We all knew the stakes. Training consumed every waking hour. We ran simulations of the descent, practiced emergency protocols until they became muscle memory, and underwent medical examinations so thorough they probably mapped every cell in our bodies. The Nautilus's interior was cramped but ingeniously designed, with every cubic centimeter serving multiple functions. The 3 acceleration couches faced a central control console surrounded by viewports. Behind these were the life support systems, equipment racks, and sample storage. Dimitri insisted I learn the basics of piloting the submersible. Primary pilot, secondary pilot, emergency pilot, he said, tapping first himself, then Amara, then me. 3 systems, 3 backups, 3 pilots. This is proper design. The Russian spent hours guiding me through the controls, explaining redundancy systems and drilling emergency procedures. By the 4th day I could execute a basic ascent profile blindfolded. While we trained, the scientific team continued analyzing data from the target. Each new scan revealed additional details. The surface patterns were more complex than initially thought, with structures resembling nested fractals. The radiation signature remained steady, but exhibited strange harmonics that defied conventional analysis. Dr. Reed discovered something particularly disturbing on day 5. The sediment surrounding the object contains elevated levels of iridium and osmium, he announced during the evening briefing, similar to what we find at the KT boundary. "The dinosaur extinction layer?" Amara asked, leaning forward. Reed nodded. "Whatever this object is, it's been there since the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event, approximately 66 million years. The implications silenced the room. An artificial object, or something that appeared artificial, had been lying at the bottom of the Mariana Trench since the time of the dinosaurs. Captain Foster increased security protocols after that announcement. All communications with the outside world became heavily encrypted, and he restricted access to certain data to senior team members only. I caught glimpses of military vessels on the horizon occasionally, unmarked ships maintaining discreet distance but clearly monitoring our activities. Standard procedure for sensitive research, Eleanor assured me when I mentioned them. Nothing to worry about. But worry had become the background radiation of the expedition. It manifested in small ways: crew members startling at unexpected noises, hushed conversations that stopped when others approached, the increasing consumption of sleeping pills and stimulants. The ship's doctor, Philip Graves, reported a spike in insomnia and anxiety among the crew. "It's normal before a major operation," he said, though his own eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. "Everyone's on edge." On the night before our scheduled descent, I found Vincent alone on the observation deck, staring out at the moonlit sea. The sonar technician had become increasingly withdrawn as the expedition progressed. "You believe in God, Mercer?" he asked without preamble. "Depends on the day," I answered honestly. "Why?" "Been having dreams about the thing down there." His fingers tapped an irregular rhythm against the railing. "In the dreams, it sings. Not with sound, with something else." "Just pre-dive jitters," I offered, though the hairs on my arms had risen. Vincent shook his head. "I've isolated the acoustic signature it's emitting. There's a pattern, deliberate modulations that repeat every 27.38 hours. "You're saying it's communicating?" "I'm saying it's waiting." He turned to face me, his expression disturbed in the harsh deck lighting. "And I think it's awake now." I didn't sleep at all that night. Instead, I reviewed the mission parameters again and prepared my personal equipment. Among the items I always carried on deep dives was a titanium pendant my father had given me after my first recovery operation, a simple disc engraved with the diver's maxim, "Plan the dive, dive the plan." It had become my talisman over the years, a reminder that discipline and preparation were the keys to survival in the deep. As I slipped the chain around my neck that morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that no amount of planning would prepare us for what waited below. Our descent began at 4:30 a.m. on a calm morning. The ocean was flat as glass, the air unusually still. Dimitri, Amara, and I squeezed into the cramped confines of the Nautilus while the others monitored from the ship. The submersible was designed for 3, but with our equipment, it felt like being buried alive. The launch procedure was meticulously choreographed. The hangar roof retracted, exposing the Nautilus to the pre-dawn sky. Massive hydraulic arms lifted us from the cradle and swung the submersible out over the water. For a moment, we hung suspended between air and ocean, between the known world and the abyss that awaited. "Nautilus, this is Control." Eleanor's voice came through our headsets. "Final systems check complete. You are go for descent." "Acknowledged, Control," Dimitri responded, his accent thickening with concentration as his fingers danced across the controls. "Beginning descent in 3, 2, 1. The cables released, and we dropped into the sea with a surprisingly gentle splash. Water closed over the viewports, transforming the world outside into a rippling blue twilight. Buoyancy tanks filled automatically, and the Nautilus began its controlled sink into the depths. "First checkpoint, surface level," Dimitri announced. "All systems nominal." "Copy that, Nautilus," came Captain Foster's reply. "Maintain descent rate at 30 meters per minute until 1,000 meters, then increase to mission profile." The first 1,000 meters were familiar. The gradual fading of sunlight. The transition through the thermocline, where warm surface water gives way to the eternal cold below. Schools of tuna scattered before our lights, silver bodies flashing in the artificial illumination. A manta ray, enormous and graceful, passed so close to the viewports that we could see the texture of its skin. Water temperature dropping as expected, Amara reported, monitoring the environmental sensors. Current oxygen levels at 4.3 milliliters per liter, decreasing with depth. As we passed 2,000 meters, we entered the twilight zone. The ocean outside turned from blue to an inky indigo, then to absolute black. Our powerful external lights could penetrate only a few meters into the gloom. Occasional bioluminescent organisms drifted past, jellyfish pulsing with internal light, lanternfish with their rows of photophores, strange crustaceans with glowing appendages. At 3,000 meters, we entered the midnight zone, where even the concept of day becomes meaningless. The only light in this realm comes from the creatures themselves, evolutionary adaptations to an environment of eternal darkness. Amara monitored the external cameras, occasionally pointing out bioluminescent creatures that drifted past our lights. "Look at that one," she said, indicating a jellyfish-like organism with pulsing blue lights along its bell. "That species isn't in any database." Dimitri grunted. "Down here, everything is new. Everything is alien." Life became sparser as we continued our descent. The pressure outside had risen to over 300 atmospheres, enough to crush an unprotected human body instantly. Inside our titanium bubble, the only indication of the incredible forces bearing down on us was the occasional creak of the hull and the subtle compression of the viewports. "Nautilus, be advised we're tracking a thermal anomaly approximately 200 meters below your position." Dr. Reed's voice came through the radio. "Unexplained heat signature where there shouldn't be any geothermal activity." "Copy that," I responded. "We'll investigate when we reach that depth." Amara calibrated the external sensors to scan for temperature variations. If there's hydrothermal vent activity this deep, it would be a significant discovery, could indicate tectonic processes we weren't aware of. The anomaly revealed itself as a subtle warming of the water, barely 2 degrees above the surrounding near-freezing temperature. Not dramatic enough to suggest a vent, but definitely irregular for this depth. "No visible source," Amara reported, scanning with the external cameras. but the pattern is consistent with water that's been heated and is now cooling as it disperses. Like something hot moved through recently, I suggested. She nodded, frowning at her displays. Precisely like that. At 5,000 meters, the radio began to crackle with interference. Vincent's voice from the surface became increasingly broken. Readings fluctuating, magnetic anomaly. Then silence. Probably the pressure affecting our communications array, Dmitri suggested, but the tension in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. We attempted to re-establish contact for several minutes without success. According to our mission protocols, communication loss wasn't grounds for abandoning the descent unless accompanied by other system failures. After a brief discussion, we agreed to continue. We're still recording everything, Amara pointed out. Even if we can't transmit to the surface, we're collecting valuable data. The pressure outside had reached 500 atmospheres by now, equivalent to having 5 passenger vehicles stacked on every square inch of our hull. I found myself instinctively taking shallower breaths, though the cabin pressure remained normal. It was psychological, the subconscious mind reacting to the knowledge of what waited just beyond the viewports. Dmitri noticed my controlled breathing and smiled grimly. "Is normal," he said. "Body knows it should be crushed, even if brain says we are safe. I get same feeling every deep dive." At 6,000 meters, we crossed into the Hadal zone, named for Hades, the Greek underworld. Fewer than 20 people in human history had ventured this deep, and we were about to go much deeper. The Nautilus's exterior lights illuminated a barren landscape of silt and occasional rocky outcroppings. Life here was scarce but still present. Translucent sea cucumbers, bizarre deep-sea fish with distended jaws, and pale crustaceans that scuttled away from our lights. Hull integrity at 98.7%, Dmitri reported, within expected parameters. Temperature holding steady at 2.3 degrees Celsius, Amara added. Slightly warmer than predicted for this depth. I checked the sonar display, which showed the massive drop-off ahead, the edge of the Challenger Deep, the final stage of our journey. Beyond that cliff lay the absolute bottom of the world's oceans, a place more alien than the surface of Europa. Approaching terminal descent point, I announced, following protocol even though there was no one listening from above, preparing for final approach to target. At 6,000 meters, we all felt it. A vibration that wasn't from our engines. A deep, rhythmic pulsing that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Underwater current, I suggested. Amara shook her head, checking her instruments. Nothing on the readings, water is still. I glanced at Dmitri, whose face had gone rigid with concentration. His hands moved across the control panels with practiced precision, checking and rechecking system diagnostics. External sensors detecting no source for vibration, he reported. Hull microphones picking up something. He routed the audio to the cabin speakers. At first, I heard nothing but the normal sounds of our vessel, the hum of life support, the occasional ping of metal adjusting to pressure changes. Then I noticed it. Beneath those familiar noises, a subtle rhythm. Not mechanical, not regular enough to be machinery, but definitely patterned. Almost like a heartbeat, but with extra systoles that made it sound wrong to human ears. Could be a geological event, I suggested, though I didn't believe it. Subsurface plate activity. Possibly, Amara agreed, but her eyes said otherwise. Let's continue the descent and gather more data. The vibrations continued as we descended further, accompanied now by a strange visual phenomenon, momentary flashes of blue-green light in the water beyond our searchlights. Not bioluminescence, but something more like heat lightning, gone almost before you could register it. Bioluminescence doesn't behave like that, Amara muttered, adjusting the sensitivity on the external cameras. Too bright, too brief, and the spectral analysis is odd. I peered through the viewport trying to catch another flash. Odd how. The wavelength doesn't match any known bioluminescent organism. It's closer to electrical discharge, but there's no apparent source. Dmitri tapped a series of commands into the console, redirecting power to the exterior sensors. Could be equipment malfunction. Pressure at this depth does strange things to electronics. Run a diagnostic, I suggested. The Russian nodded, initiating the submersible's self-check protocols. The cabin filled with the soft hum of computers working, displays flickering as systems reported their status. Everything came back normal. No malfunctions, no anomalies in our own equipment. So something out there is generating those flashes, I said, the implication hanging heavy in the confined space. At 7,000 meters, we passed a field of hydrothermal vents, black smokers belching superheated water filled with mineral deposits. In the glow of our lights, the plumes looked like pillars supporting the crushing weight of the ocean above. Ghostly white crabs scuttled among the mineral formations, their bodies adapted to the toxic environment. Remarkable ecosystem, Amara said, recording video of the vents. These organisms have evolved in complete isolation from the rest of the biosphere. I watched a swarm of eyeless shrimp navigate the thermal gradients with uncanny precision. Makes you wonder what other adaptations might be possible given enough time. Even evolution has limits, she replied. Certain physical constraints cannot be overcome: pressure, temperature extremes, absence of sunlight. And yet, life finds a way, I quoted, trying to lighten the mood. Neither of my companions smiled. At 8,000 meters, our external temperature sensors began to malfunction. According to our readings, the water outside had warmed by 3 degrees, impossible at this depth. Checking secondary sensors, Dmitri announced, fingers flying across his controls. Confirmed. Temperature increase verified. That can't be right, Amara protested. The laws of thermodynamics don't just take a holiday. Heat has to come from somewhere. I checked our position against the mapping data. Are we near any known hydrothermal features? Negative. Nearest vent field is 700 meters behind us. This is open water. The temperature continued to rise as we descended. At 8,500 meters, the external sensors registered 4.7 degrees Celsius, nearly 5 degrees warmer than the expected temperature at this depth. Could be waste heat from the target, I suggested. If it's generating radiation, it must be producing thermal energy as well. Amara shook her head. Radiation at the levels we detected wouldn't produce this kind of thermal signature, and it doesn't explain the distribution pattern. The heat is coming from all around us, not from below. Almost like we're inside something, Dmitri murmured, then immediately looked like he regretted the observation. The flashes of light had increased in frequency, occurring every few minutes now. They illuminated the water around us in brief, disorienting bursts, revealing nothing but empty ocean in all directions. Yet the sense of presence, of something vast surrounding our tiny vessel, grew stronger with each meter of our descent. We should abort, Dmitri said, his hand hovering over the emergency ascent controls. His voice had taken on an edge I'd never heard from him before. Too many unexplained phenomena, protocol says. We're less than 2,000 meters from the target, I countered. We'll never get authorization for another attempt if we turn back now. The Russian's jaw tightened. Authorization will not matter if we are dead, my friend. Amara had been silent, studying her displays with intense concentration. I think we should continue, she said finally, but with extreme caution. We've come too far to turn back without answers. I nodded, grateful for her support. Dmitri. He exhaled slowly, his breath fogging slightly in the increasingly chilly cabin air. I will continue, but we maintain constant system monitoring. Any critical failure, any single warning sign from the hull integrity sensors, we ascend immediately, no debate. Agreed, I said. Amara, agreed. The Nautilus continued its descent, slipping deeper into the abyss. The vibrations we'd been feeling intensified, resolving into a distinct rhythm that seemed to resonate with the hull itself. The temperature outside continued to rise, reaching 5.3 degrees Celsius at 9,000 meters, a physical impossibility that none of us could explain. Approaching final descent vector, Dmitri announced, 10,000 meters in 3 minutes. I felt the weight of the ocean above us pressing down, not physically but psychologically. Nearly 7 miles of water separated us from the surface, from air and light and safety. We were deeper than Mount Everest is tall, in a realm so hostile to human life that we might as well have been on another planet. "Look," Amara said suddenly, pointing to one of the monitor displays. "Sonar's picking up our target." The screen showed a fuzzy image, distorted by interference, but unmistakably large. A massive object resting on the ocean floor ahead. The shape was roughly oval, with what appeared to be protrusions or extensions along its sides. "Size estimate?" I asked. "Approximately 65 meters in length, 20 meters at its widest point," she reported, roughly consistent with preliminary scans from the surface. As we drew closer, the sonar image began to shift and distort. "That can't be right," Amara murmured, adjusting the settings. "It's as if the structure is moving." Dmitri swore in Russian. "Nothing moves at this depth, nothing can survive." But the evidence before us was undeniable. The target was changing shape, subtle alterations in its outline, shifts in its position relative to the seabed. Not dramatic movement, but definitely not static either. "Could be current affecting its position," I suggested, though I knew the waters at this depth were virtually still. "Or our sonar experiencing interference from the same electromagnetic anomalies affecting our other sensors," Amara added, equally unconvincing. 10,000 meters, Dmitri announced. "Maximum operating depth for Nautilus design." We had reached the threshold of our vessel's capabilities. From this point forward, we were venturing beyond the safety parameters established by its engineers. The hull creaked ominously, the titanium alloy protesting against pressures it had never been tested to withstand. "Hull integrity at 94.2%, Dmitri reported, "still within acceptable limits, but declining faster than predicted." I made the call. "Let's continue to target depth and hold position there for sample collection. Minimum duration necessary, then we begin ascent." My companions nodded, tension evident in their postures. We were all experienced enough to recognize the increasing risk, but too committed to turn back when our goal was literally within sight. The final 1,000 meters of descent seemed to take an eternity. The vibrations had become so pronounced that our instruments vibrated on their mountings. The flashes of light outside occurred almost continuously now, creating a strobe-like effect that made it difficult to maintain visual focus. The temperature had stabilized at 5.7 degrees Celsius, inexplicable but at least not continuing to rise. "There," Amara said suddenly, pointing through the forward viewport. At first, I saw nothing but the familiar, empty blackness. Then another flash illuminated the water ahead, and I glimpsed something, a vast, pale shape in the distance, gone as quickly as it appeared. "Did you see it?" she asked. "Something," I admitted. "Could have been a rock formation." 11,000 meters, Dmitri announced. "Target directly below, 400 meters and closing." Our descent slowed to a crawl as Dmitri engaged the precision maneuvering thrusters. The Nautilus crept downward meter by meter, sensors constantly scanning for obstacles or signs of danger. And suddenly, there it was. The vibrations intensified as we approached the bottom. Our external lights illuminated a seabed of fine, pale silt that swirled in patterns that defied the absence of current. And there, half buried in the ancient mud of the deepest place on Earth, was our target. It wasn't a shipwreck. It wasn't a structure at all. "My God," Amara whispered. "It's organic." The thing resembled a massive cocoon, its surface a network of interlocking plates that resembled metallic scales. Parts of it pulsed with dim bioluminescence, creating patterns that seemed almost like circuit boards or writing in some alien language. The rest remained hidden beneath the silt. As our lights played across its surface, I noticed subtle movements, ripples passing through the scales, sections contracting and expanding in rhythm with the vibrations we'd been feeling throughout our descent. This was the source. This living thing at the bottom of the Mariana Trench was somehow generating pulses powerful enough to be felt thousands of meters above. "Impossible," Dmitri muttered, but the word had lost its meaning. We were looking at the impossible made manifest. I checked our instruments, radiation levels increasing, still within safe parameters but significantly higher than background. Temperature directly adjacent to the object is 8.2 degrees, Amara reported. "It's generating heat." "What is it?" Dmitri asked, the question hanging in the cramped confines of our vessel. Amara shook her head slowly. Nothing in evolutionary biology can explain this. Nothing should be able to survive at these pressures, let alone something of this size. Could it be technological? I suggested. Some kind of biomechanical construct. From whom, when, how? She gestured at the displays showing the creature's vital signs. This isn't technology, Jack. It's alive, metabolizing, generating energy, responding to stimuli. As if to emphasize her point, the creature pulsed more brightly as our searchlights focused on a particular section of its surface. The pattern of lights changed, shifting from random seeming flickers to more organized sequences. We need samples, Amara said, already preparing the external collection arm. Wait, I cautioned, studying the formation through the viewport. Look at the seabed around it. The silt was disturbed in a wide radius around the cocoon, as if something had been moving recently, and there, half hidden in the gloom, was a shape I recognized all too well, the crushed remains of another submersible. Someone else was here, I said. Recently. Dimitri adjusted our lights, illuminating the wreckage more clearly. The pressure vessel had been completely compromised, crushed by the immense pressure of the deep. But the destruction showed patterns inconsistent with simple implosion. Parts of the hull appeared to have been peeled open. That's a Geo-Long-class deep submergence vehicle, Dimitri identified, voice tight. Chinese design, rated for full ocean depth. The Chinese mission Eleanor mentioned, I said. They didn't just lose contact with their submersible, they lost everything. Amara's face had paled. We should report this immediately. No radio contact, remember, I reminded her. We're on our own. Dimitri tried the communication systems again, but only static answered. We were truly alone. A tense silence filled the cabin as we assessed our situation. We had discovered something unprecedented, a massive organism surviving at pressures that should render complex life impossible. We had evidence of a previous expedition that had ended in disaster, and we had no way to contact our support vessel. The mission parameters are clear, Amara said finally. Observe, document, collect samples if possible, then return to the surface. The parameters didn't account for finding another wrecked submersible, Dimitri countered. Or whatever that thing is. I made the call. We proceed with extreme caution. No direct contact with the organism. We collect samples from the surrounding sediment only and maintain safe distance at all times. Reluctantly, my companions agreed. The plan was simple. Take exterior photographs, collect sediment samples from the periphery of the organism, and retreat to a safe distance to study what we'd found. Simple, cautious, scientific. Dimitri maneuvered the Nautilus in a wide arc around the cocoon, maintaining a distance of at least 20 meters. Amara operated the high-resolution cameras, capturing detailed images of the organism's surface features. I monitored our systems and the creature's biometrics, watching for any changes that might indicate a threat. The radiation signature is fluctuating, I reported, increasing in intensity when we move closer, decreasing when we move away. It's almost like it knows we're here, Amara finished. Impossible, Dimitri muttered, but with less conviction than before. We completed our initial survey and positioned the Nautilus at what we judged to be a safe distance for sample collection. The extended sampling arm unfolded from its housing on the submersible's underside, a delicate robotic appendage tipped with collection tools and sensors. Targeting sediment approximately 5 meters from the organism's perimeter, Amara announced, guiding the arm with precise movements. No unusual readings from the sample site. The collection tool dipped into the fine silt, scooping a measure into its sealed container. So far, so good. We repeated the process at 3 additional locations, gradually working closer to the organism itself. Final sample from the immediate perimeter, Amara said, extending the arm to its maximum reach. The collection tool hovered just above the seafloor, centimeters from where the creature's scaled surface emerged from the silt. That's when everything changed. The moment the collection arm's shadow fell across the organism's surface, the bioluminescent patterns flared brilliantly, briefly blinding us. The vibrations we'd felt throughout our descent suddenly stopped, replaced by absolute stillness. Then, with a grace that defied comprehension, a section of the cocoon began to unfurl. What emerged still haunts my dreams. It had wings, massive, feathered appendages that should have been crushed by the pressure, but instead unfurled with terrible elegance. Each feather was bone white and seemed to catch light that didn't exist in the abyssal dark. The creature's body was vaguely humanoid but wrong in proportions, limbs too long, torso too thin, joints bending in directions that biology shouldn't allow. But its face, God help me, its face is what I cannot forget. A too wide mouth filled with teeth like crystalline needles, arranged in concentric rings that rotated independently when the jaw unhinged. And the eyes, bloodshot orbs that glowed with an inner light, filled with an intelligence and malice that was unmistakably conscious. As the creature emerged fully from the cocoon, I could see more details of its horrific anatomy. The wings spanned at least 30 meters tip to tip, their structure somehow maintaining integrity despite the crushing pressure. The feathers weren't truly feathers at all, but complex filaments that rippled with bioluminescence, changing colors in hypnotic patterns. The creature's torso was elongated and segmented, reminiscent of an insect but covered in a material that resembled polished metal, yet moved like living tissue. Its limbs, there were 6 of them, not including the wings, ended in hands with too many fingers, each digit tipped with translucent claws that seemed to phase in and out of visibility as they moved. And everywhere across its body, those same circuit-like patterns of light pulsed and shifted, communicating something in a language of illumination. Ascend, I screamed, but my voice sounded distant and muffled in my own ears. Full emergency ascent protocol. Dimitri was already hammering the emergency controls, his face a mask of terror. Nothing happened. Our power fluctuated, lights dimming and engines sputtering. Power systems failing, he reported, voice cracking. Emergency batteries not engaging. We're losing. The cabin lights went out completely, plunging us into darkness, broken only by the glow of a few emergency indicators and the terrible radiance of the creature outside our viewports. It saw us. It knew us. The creature drifted toward us with deliberate slowness, those impossible wings moving through the water as easily as air. One elongated hand reached out, 7-fingered and tipped with translucent claws, and touched the exterior of our vessel. The metal beneath its touch began to change. I can't describe it better than that. The alloys designed to withstand the most extreme conditions on Earth simply yielded, becoming malleable as clay. Hull breach imminent, Dimitri reported, his voice eerily calm now. Sector 7 showing deformation beyond tolerances. Amara had moved to the emergency equipment locker, pulling out our last resort survival gear, pressure suits designed to provide temporary protection if the main hull was compromised. We all knew they were useless at this depth, but human instinct demands action, even when futile. The sample arm, Amara gasped suddenly, use it to push away. It was desperate, probably pointless, but the only option we had. Dimitri managed to reroute emergency power to the collection arm controls. The robotic limb still had some functionality, though its more delicate sampling tools had been crushed by the pressure when our main power failed. Extending arm now, he announced, manipulating the controls with shaking hands. On the external cameras, still functioning on backup power, we watched as the mechanical arm swung awkwardly toward the creature. The movement was jerky, hampered by power fluctuations and increasing pressure deformation, but it moved. The creature paused in its examination of our hull, those terrible bloodshot eyes shifting to track the approaching mechanical arm. There was curiosity in that gaze, an ancient, cold intelligence assessing this new development. The arm struck the creature's midsection with a glancing blow. Not powerful, not damaging, but enough to surprise it. The entity recoiled slightly, its wings flaring in a display that somehow conveyed both irritation and amusement. That moment of distraction was enough. Our engines sputtered back to life, drawing on the last reserves of our emergency power. The Nautilus began to rise, agonizingly slowly at first, then with increasing speed as Dimitri channeled everything we had into the ascent thrusters. Hull integrity at 78%, he reported. If we maintain this ascent rate, we might reach safer depths before catastrophic failure. Through the viewports, I watched the creature receding below us, those luminous wings spread wide, that terrible face tilted upward to track our escape. It made no immediate move to pursue, seeming almost curious about our desperate flight. "We're going to make it," Amara whispered, clutching the handrail as our vessel accelerated upward. I wasn't so sure. The ease of our escape felt wrong somehow. The creature had breached the exterior hull with a touch. It could have destroyed us completely with minimal effort. Why let us go? The answer came with horrifying swiftness. At approximately 10,500 meters, less than 500 meters from our starting depth, a shadow passed over the viewport. The creature hadn't pursued immediately. It didn't need to. It had simply waited, then ascended with impossible speed, positioning itself directly above our escape route. Its wings spread wide, blocking our path. What happened next defies explanation. The creature began to emit a sound, not audible exactly, but felt within our skulls. A vibration that formed into concepts, into meaning. "I am ancient beyond your reckoning." The words, if they could be called words, resonated directly in my consciousness, bypassing my ears entirely. They came with images, impressions of vast periods of time, of darkness and waiting and slow, patient transformation. Not of your world but imprisoned here. A vision of stars, of movement between them, of a catastrophic descent through the atmosphere and ocean, impact, pain, the slow realization of entrapment in an environment utterly hostile to its nature. Before your kind crawled from the mud, eons passing, continents shifting, species rising and falling while it watched from the lightless depths, its prison and sanctuary, dinosaurs, mammals, early hominids, civilization, all observed through some sense I couldn't comprehend. "You will help me ascend." This final concept came with a wave of force, psychic, physical, or something in between, that slammed into us like a tsunami. The pain was excruciating. Blood trickled from Amara's nose, from Dimitri's ears. I felt as if my skull would split open. Full power, I shouted to Dimitri, who could barely keep his hand on the controls. "Ram it if you have to." The Nautilus surged upward, but the creature moved with impossible speed, always remaining above us. The mental assault continued, images flooding my consciousness, civilizations rising and falling, oceans boiling and freezing, continents shifting like puzzle pieces. And through it all, the creature watching, waiting, imprisoned in the eternal darkness. Its next communication felt different, more focused, directed specifically at me rather than broadcast to all of us. "You have touched the void before." With this came a flash of my own memories. Every deep dive I'd ever undertaken, every moment I'd spent in the crushing embrace of the abyss. But twisted, examined from an alien perspective that found meaning in patterns I'd never noticed. "I have felt your kind before." Images of other submersibles, other explorers throughout history who had ventured into the deep trenches. Most had never returned to the surface, some had. Those who did brought something back with them, a fragment, an echo, a seed. Pieces of me have already ascended. This concept arrived with a sense of triumph, of a plan long in execution finally bearing fruit. I saw coastal communities where people moved with strange, jerky motions, research labs where scientists worked with biological samples that pulsed with familiar bioluminescent patterns, military installations where sealed containers bore radiation warnings. "You are the final vessel." The mental pressure intensified, focusing like a laser on my consciousness. I felt something, not physical but no less real, trying to push inside me, to hollow out space in my mind for itself. Dimly, I was aware of Amara screaming, of Dimitri fighting with the controls. The Nautilus was shuddering violently, hull integrity alarms blaring from every console. But these sensations seemed distant, secondary to the invasion attempting to overwhelm my identity. I fought back with everything I had, concentrating on memories the creature couldn't touch. My father teaching me to dive in a sun-dappled quarry, the taste of my mother's apple pie, the feeling of rain on my face after a month underwater. Human experiences, anchors to my humanity. The pressure wavered momentarily. In that instant of reprieve, I saw Dimitri slam his fist down on a control panel I hadn't noticed before, a covered switch labeled experimental countermeasures. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A pulse of energy rippled outward from the Nautilus, visible as a distortion in the water. It struck the creature and disrupted its form somehow, not damaging it exactly, but causing its outline to blur, its patterns of light to stutter and desynchronize. The mental assault ceased. Our viewport showed only empty water above. We didn't slow our ascent. Emergency protocols be damned. We rose as fast as the Nautilus could manage, risking the bends and worse. The hull integrity continued to deteriorate. Microfractures spreading through the pressure sphere, viewports developing hairline cracks that threatened to catastrophically fail. What was that countermeasure? I asked Dimitri when I could speak again. He shook his head, focusing on piloting. Electromagnetic pulse generator, designed to disrupt enemy sonar and targeting systems. Not meant for this. It worked, Amara noted, wiping blood from her face. Temporarily at least. We have bigger problems, Dimitri replied grimly. Hull won't survive another encounter, and we still have 5,000 meters to ascend. The Nautilus groaned and creaked as we rose, the sounds of metal under extreme stress filling the cabin. Dimitri nursed our failing systems, rerouting power, balancing thrust against structural integrity, performing 1,000 calculations per second to keep us alive. At 6,000 meters, we detected it again, that rhythmic vibration, faint but unmistakable. It's following us, Amara whispered. I checked the rear cameras. Nothing visible yet, but the water behind us flickered occasionally with those same blue-green discharges we'd seen before. Whether they were direct evidence of the creature or some effect it generated in the surrounding environment, I couldn't tell. Can we use the countermeasure again? I asked. Dimitri shook his head. One-time system. Capacitors are fried. We continued our ascent in tense silence, monitoring our pursuers through instruments rather than direct observation. The vibrations grew stronger, the energy discharges more frequent. It was gaining on us. At 5,000 meters, we hit a thermocline, a natural boundary between water layers of different temperatures. As we passed through this barrier, something remarkable happened. The vibrations suddenly diminished, the energy discharges ceased. It stopped, Amara said, disbelieving. I checked every instrument, every camera, nothing, no sign of pursuit. The thermocline, I realized. It can't cross it, or won't. That makes no sense, Amara protested. A temperature differential of a few degrees wouldn't stop something that can survive 11,000 meters of pressure. Perhaps it's not the temperature, Dimitri suggested. Perhaps it's something else that changes at this boundary. Salinity, dissolved oxygen content, microbial populations. Whatever the reason, we had gained a reprieve. The Nautilus continued its ascent, system stabilizing somewhat now that we'd reached more conventional depths. At 3,000 meters, we finally re-established radio contact with the surface. The transmission was filled with static, but audible. Nautilus, this is Abyssal Pioneer. Captain Foster's voice crackled through the speakers. Do you copy? Over. Abyssal Pioneer, this is Nautilus, I responded. We copy. Emergency ascent in progress. Prepare medical evac and full decontamination protocols. Copy that, Nautilus. Situation report. I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal over an open channel. Hull compromised. Multiple systems failing. 3 crew members wounded but stable. Target. Target is hostile. Repeat, target is hostile. There was a long pause before the reply came. Understood, Nautilus. Continue ascent. Support team standing by. The final portion of our ascent was mercifully uneventful. As we approached 1,000 meters, sunlight became visible again, dim, filtered, but unmistakably the light of the world above. It had never looked so beautiful. Hull integrity stabilized at 68%, Dimitri reported. We'll make it to the surface. Amara had been unnaturally quiet since our escape. She sat at her station, mechanically monitoring the environmental systems, but her eyes had a distant, haunted look. Blood had dried beneath her nose and ears. Are you alright? I asked her during a quiet moment. She turned to me slowly, her movements stiff. It's still with us, Jack. What do you mean? We left it behind at the thermocline. She shook her head. Not physically, but I can still feel it. Here, she tapped her temple with a trembling finger. It's waiting, watching through my eyes. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cabin temperature. That's just the after effects of the psychic assault. It'll pass. Will it? She smiled faintly. How would we know? Has anyone ever experienced what we just did and lived to provide baseline data? She had a point. We were in uncharted territory, both scientifically and psychologically. Whatever that creature had done to our minds might have effects we couldn't predict or even recognize. When we finally breached the surface, the night sky was filled with stars, beautiful and distant and sane. The lights of the Abyssal Pioneer blazed nearby, a beacon of human civilization and safety. The crew of the Abyssal Pioneer was in chaos. Communications had been down for hours. They'd been preparing a rescue submersible when we emerged. What happened down there? Dr. Frost demanded as we were helped aboard, shaking and bloodied. I couldn't answer, wouldn't answer, but Amara, ever the scientist, recounted everything in clinical detail while the ship's doctor examined us. A biological entity of unknown classification, she reported, voice steady despite her pallor, approximately 65 meters in length, possessing features inconsistent with any known evolutionary lineage: wings, bioluminescence, telepathic capabilities, extreme resistance to pressure and temperature, and hostile to human contact. They didn't believe us, of course, not until they examined the sample container. Somehow, during our encounter, the collection arm had obtained a sample after all, a single feather, impossibly white and impossibly intact despite the pressure. Under the microscope, its structure defied analysis, simultaneously organic and inorganic, its cells, if you could call them that, constantly shifting and rearranging themselves even as we watched. And it was growing. Initial measurements showed the feather expanding by approximately 0.03 millimeters per hour, a rate that would become exponential if the pattern held. More disturbing still, it was generating the same radiation signature we'd detected from the creature, weak but unmistakable. Dr. Reed examined it with instruments typically used for geological samples, confirming what Amara had theorized. The cellular structure contains elements not found in Earth's biosphere, atomic arrangements that shouldn't be stable under normal conditions. Captain Foster ordered it sealed in a pressure container and locked in the ship's safe. Dr. Reed wanted to continue the expedition, to send down remote vehicles to document the creature, but he was overruled. "We're returning to port immediately," the captain announced. "This is beyond our mission parameters or capabilities." That night I dreamed of the creature for the first time. I stood on an endless plain under alien stars, and it towered above me, wings spread wide enough to block out the sky. Its bloodshot eyes fixed on mine as that too wide mouth opened, revealing the rotating rings of crystalline teeth. "You carried me out." I woke drenched in sweat, heart hammering in my chest. Across the cabin, Dimitri was sitting upright in his bunk, staring at nothing. "You dreamed it too," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "We all did," came Amara's voice from the shadows. She sat in the corner of the cabin, knees drawn up to her chest. "It's establishing a connection, using the feather as an anchor." The thought made my skin crawl. "We should destroy it." "Too late," she whispered. "It's already inside us, inside everyone who's been near it." We were 2 days from port when the nightmares began in earnest. The same dream, shared by everyone aboard the Abyssal Pioneer. Wings unfurling in darkness, blood-filled eyes, and that voice resonating in our collective consciousness. "I am ascending." The ship's doctor was overwhelmed with crew members reporting headaches, nosebleeds, auditory hallucinations. Captain Foster maintained strict communications blackout, unwilling to risk word of our discovery spreading. On the third night, Vincent Torres, our sonar technician, tried to steal the sample. Security found him attempting to break into the safe, bleeding from self-inflicted wounds on his forearms. His blood, he explained when restrained, would feed it faster. We confined him to the medical bay under sedation. By morning, 2 more crew members had developed similar symptoms: a compulsion to access the sample, to bring it into contact with organic material, human material. "It's controlling them somehow," Dr. Frost theorized during an emergency meeting in the captain's quarters, using the psychic connection it established to influence behavior. "Why not all of us?" Captain Foster demanded. "Why only certain individuals?" Amara, who had been studying the affected crew members, offered her hypothesis. Susceptibility varies. Those with certain neurological patterns are more vulnerable to the influence. It's selecting for specific traits, intelligence, technical skills, access to ship systems. It's building a functional team, I realized, choosing the people it needs to accomplish whatever it's planning. We implemented strict security protocols. The affected crew members remained sedated. Armed guards were posted at the safe. Everyone else traveled in pairs to prevent isolated incidents. Still, the dreams continued, each night more detailed than the last. The creature rising through the ocean, those magnificent, terrible wings propelling it upward, its body changing, adapting to decreasing pressure, its mind reaching out, touching others, influencing them. We arrived at Guam with the entire crew in a state of paranoid exhaustion. The government representatives who met us weren't from any Oceanic Research Division. They wore unmarked black suits and spoke in careful, measured tones. They confiscated our data, our samples, our personal records. This discovery is now classified, their leader informed us. You will be debriefed separately. You will sign non-disclosure agreements. You will never speak of what you saw. They separated us immediately. I spent 3 weeks in debriefing, which felt more like interrogation. The facility was underground, windowless, clinically sterile. My interrogators rotated every 8 hours, but their questions remained consistent. Describe the creature's method of communication again. Could you discern any technological components to its structure? What exact wording did it use when it communicated with you? Did it reference any specific locations on the surface? They were particularly interested in the mental communication, in the exact wording the creature had used. When I mentioned its claim of being imprisoned, their expressions changed. They knew something. They showed me historical records, heavily redacted but clear enough in their implications. Similar encounters throughout history, dating back centuries. Sailors' accounts of winged entities rising from deep ocean trenches. Expedition logs describing telepathic contact with non-human intelligences. Scientific data showing radiation anomalies and biological samples with unexplainable properties. This isn't the first one, is it? I asked my primary interrogator, a woman who had introduced herself only as Phillips. We don't know if they're the same entity or multiple entities of the same species, she replied, surprisingly forthcoming. But no, yours wasn't the first encounter. And the others who encountered them, what happened to those people? Her hesitation told me everything I needed to know. The nightmares continued throughout my confinement, evolving from simple replays of our encounter to more elaborate visions. I saw the creature ascending through ocean layers, adapting to changing pressure and temperature. I saw it reaching land somewhere, a small, isolated island. I saw it extending its influence outward in concentric circles, touching the minds of fishermen, of passing ships, of coastal communities. And always that same phrase echoed through the dreams. I am ascending. During the 3rd week, they began medical tests, brain scans, blood work, psychological evaluations. The doctors never explained what they were looking for, but their concern was evident when they reviewed my results. The hippocampus shows unusual activity patterns. I overheard one say to another, similar to Subject 17B from the Pacific incident. Progressive deterioration in the prefrontal cortex as well, the other replied. Consistent with stage 2 exposure. They treated us with experimental drugs. Neurological inhibitors designed to block whatever influence the creature was exerting. The side effects were brutal. Migraines, tremors, occasional seizures. But they did diminish the dreams somewhat. They released me eventually, with warnings and threats and a substantial deposit in my bank account. Hush money. I returned to my apartment in Seattle, tried to resume normal life, but normalcy was an illusion now. The nightmares continued, evolving, becoming more detailed. The creature rising through the ocean, those magnificent, terrible wings propelling it upward, its body changing, adapting to decreasing pressure, its mind reaching out, touching others, influencing them. The medication they'd given me, a blue pill taken twice daily, kept the worst at bay, but if I missed even a single dose, the dreams returned with redoubled intensity, and now they included new elements, coordinates, locations, names of people I'd never met but somehow recognized. I began researching, quietly at first, then with increasing desperation, ancient myths of winged beings cast down into the depths, sailors' legends of things glimpsed in the abyss, scientific anomalies, unexplained seismic events, mysterious radiation patterns, magnetic field disturbances, all centered around the deepest ocean trenches. 3 months after our expedition, Amara contacted me through an encrypted messaging service. She'd been tracking unusual oceanic phenomena, temperature anomalies, current disruptions, marine life behaving erratically, all moving steadily eastward from the Mariana Trench. "It's following the path I saw in my dreams," she wrote. "Exactly as predicted, adapting to each pressure change, each temperature zone, learning, growing." She'd managed to access classified data through academic connections, reports of unidentified biological material washing up on beaches across the Pacific, tissue samples with the same impossible cellular structure as our feather, radiation signatures matching what we'd recorded in the trench. "The government knows," she concluded. "They're tracking it, but they can't stop it. Nobody can." 2 weeks later, Dmitry sent a single message. "It's following me." He was found dead in his Moscow apartment the next day. Heart failure, the official report said. He was 36 years old and had no history of cardiac issues. I tried contacting Amara immediately, but my messages went unanswered. When I finally reached her university department, they informed me she had taken an indefinite leave of absence. Her apartment was empty, her bank accounts untouched. One by one, the others who had encountered the creature began to disappear or die. Dr. Reed vanished while conducting field research in the Aleutian Islands. Dr. Frost's research vessel was lost with all hands during a sudden, localized storm near the California coast. Vincent and Captain Foster both committed suicide within days of each other, leaving identical notes. "I cannot let it in. I'm the only one left. I stopped taking the medication a month ago. The dreams returned immediately, more vivid than ever, but now I welcome them. They're my only window into the creature's movements, its plans. It doesn't know I'm watching just as it watches me, or perhaps it does know, and simply doesn't care. Through these dreams, I've pieced together its intentions. It isn't just escaping the trench. That was merely the first step. It's transforming itself, adapting to Earth's environment after eons of imprisonment, and it's replicating, using the genetic material it harvested from those it influenced. The feather we brought up wasn't just a sample, it was a seed. I feel it searching for me. In my dreams, I see through its eyes as it rises, as it learns, as it hunts. I've moved inland, as far from the ocean as I can manage, but distance seems irrelevant to its reach. Yesterday, I saw a white feather on my doorstep, impossibly pristine. I've written this account as a warning. If you're reading this and the news has begun reporting strange phenomena, unusual weather patterns, mass animal die-offs, people experiencing shared hallucinations or behaving in unexplainable ways, then it's already too late. It has ascended. I was a deep-sea recovery diver. I found something ancient and malevolent in the lightless depths of our world. Something imprisoned when the Earth was young, something that has waited eons for release. And we set it free. The winged horror with blood-filled eyes is coming, and when it arrives it will remake our world in its image. I've started seeing them in crowds now. People who move just slightly wrong, whose eyes reflect light at odd angles. People who pause in mid-conversation as if listening to voices no one else can hear. They look human, act human, but there's an emptiness behind their eyes that reminds me of the endless void of the deep ocean. Last week I saw a child on a playground spreading her arms wide, fingers splayed in a disturbingly familiar pattern. For just a moment, in the right light, I could have sworn I saw the shadow of wings extending from her shoulders. The medications don't work anymore. The government agents know this. They've stopped delivering my prescription. When I called the emergency number they'd given me, the line was disconnected. They've written me off. Perhaps they've written us all off. I don't know how much longer I have before it finds me completely. Each night, the dreams become more real, the boundary between sleep and waking more permeable. Sometimes I catch myself speaking in a language I don't understand, my tongue moving in patterns that human vocal cords weren't designed to produce. This morning, I found a white feather in my bed. Not on my doorstep, not on my desk, but under my pillow. I don't remember putting it there. When I tried to pick it up, it dissolved into my fingertips, leaving faint luminous traces beneath my skin that pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. If you find this account, if you're still wholly yourself when you read these words, I have one final piece of advice. Stay away from the ocean. Stay away from deep water of any kind. Whatever is coming doesn't need the Mariana Trench anymore. It has found new vessels, new carriers for its influence. It began in the deepest darkness of the ocean, but it won't end there. Nothing will. I've barricaded my apartment doors and windows, though I know it won't help. Physical barriers mean nothing to something that can reach directly into minds. Still, human instinct demands action, even when futile. The feather-like traces under my skin have spread. They create beautiful patterns when I turn off the lights, delicate, luminous whirls that remind me of the creature's wings. I should be terrified, but instead I feel a strange calm descending. Perhaps this is how it always happens. Perhaps surrender feels like peace in the end. I hear wings now, vast and powerful, beating just beyond the walls of my perception. The sound grows louder each hour. It's close. It's here.